Hey, good morning. Welcome to She Became Visible. Okay, I'm trying this live thing again, mostly because I really want to have some interactions with the community. So if you're out there, if you're relaxing on a Sunday morning and you don't know what to do and you're scrolling through YouTube, hopefully you will find my channel and you will participate in the conversation. So what we're going to talk about today is the unending thing that's going on in the world right now, which is the Epstein thing and the hiding of truths and the victims that are not being listened to. I mean, we're just gonna combine all of that in a general conversation of the predicament that women are finding themselves in, that we thought we were out of, that we thought we had made progress, um, and that there are so many things, the 19th Amendment and Roe versus Wade and other things like that, that we thought, check, let's move on. And even from my lifetime, I'm 71 years old and I was married in 1974. And it wasn't until 1974 that a woman could open up her own checking account. And I even remember going in and trying to, I don't remember whether I was making a deposit or wanted to open up a business account, or I can't even remember. But they were like, "Is your husband here?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, could he come in and actually fill out the form? And and what is your job again?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm opening up a new business, but right now I am a full-time homemaker." They're like, "Yeah, that doesn't really qualify. So we're going to need your husband's signature on this." So I mean, these are things that I actually have experienced in my life. And so, fortunately, I stand on the shoulders of beautiful women who were in my demographic, because I am definitely a baby boomer, but they did the hard work. I didn't. When I was, in high school in the 60s, I was literally just living my life, going through high school and trying to adapt to the fact that my parents had moved me from Illinois to Washington State my senior year in high school. So I have to start over with trying to find new friends and a new community in Washington State. And fortunately, because of theater, I was able to meet some and make some good friends in high school. Um, but that's all I was doing. And so right out of high school, I went into the US Navy and was stationed in Japan. So there were a lot of things going on in the US that I was not even aware of. I didn't have a television in Japan. And I wasn't around all of the political situations. So there were a lot of things in the early 70s that were going on in our world that I just was not aware of. And once I got married, then my whole focus became my husband and building a family. And so that's where my center of focus also went. But now that I've had a chance to kind of step back and do some historical research, I am so glad and so thankful for the women that came before me that were a few years older than me that fought for the rights of women. And what I've experienced and what I want to share and what I'm hoping you will share with me today is my experience as a full-time homemaker, a mother of 6 children, a husband who was a good provider and made it possible for us to have a large family and go on vacations and experience life together. And we definitely fulfilled the roles that were given to us by not only our fundamental religion, but also the culture. I mean, you have to go back and admit that the 50s, 60s, and 70s, late 60s was the beginning of the revolution against the culture, but the culture was still very predominant that women were homemakers, that their husbands were the predominant leader in the home, and that women were there to support their husbands. And this was highly identified through the fundamental religion that I belong to. It was literally a covenant made with God in this religion, that my sole purpose in life was to support my husband, to honor him, to obey him, and that my role in this world was to nurture and have children. And so it was not only cultural, but it was also fundamentally. And if you have ever belonged to a fundamental religion and there is a God involved in any kind of rules or laws, then you know that that is a very high precedent. It's not just a self made rule put out by men. I believed at the time that this was a law given to men on earth to share with us his will. And so any laws that came down through our church leaders were seen as a definite message from God that this is how we should be living our lives. So I just can't say enough as I'm going through and I'm looking at the things that I didn't know about, that I went along with, that I said, yes, absolutely. That has to be the truth. Then, and now I look back and I go, oh my gosh, I was, so naive and frustrated, but didn't know why. And it's that cognitive dissonance of not understanding why this belief that I have is causing me such conflict in my life. And so we're going to talk a little bit today because I've spent over 54 years in the Mormon Church, and my entire from the age of 12 up until late 60s was engulfed in this religion. I feel as though I can at least speak for myself with some kind of authority because I can express to you what my experiences were. And if you didn't have the same experiences, that's okay. If you never had any of these feelings that I have, that's okay too. I don't have the same experiences as other people that have been in the church for as long as I was. But I can still empathize and I can listen to their experiences. But mostly the most important thing, which I think brings us to the title of this subject, is I can believe them. Even though I didn't experience everything that other women my age experienced, either in the church or culturally or through their family, I can believe that their experiences are true. Now, I also don't believe that a blanket, I will believe all women at all times and all things. I'm not saying that because I have a skeptical brain and I always want to hear all of the facts. So I do believe that there are untruths that are told in both men and women and in all situations. And so it's really important to try to listen to both sides. And then you could only form your own opinion after getting the research that you have. And I think this is a way of telling you that as I do the presentations that I have downloaded today for you, I hope that you will take those under consideration, that these people are speaking from their hearts. They are speaking from their truths and their life experiences. And so it's for them to figure it out. And if it makes their life easy and happy, great. It didn't make my life easy and happy. So I chose to leave that fundamental religion, but I did not choose to leave my family because I have a fabulous family. And my husband and I take great pride in the accomplishments of our children, the what they do as adults as far as serving their communities and being a good part of the community. All 5 of our children, our youngest son has passed away and was severely disabled, but he actually did huge service to the community outside of the church and inside of the church. His presence served the community. So all 6 of our children are absolutely wonderful humans. And my husband and I are so proud of that. So with that, let's get going. Let's start talking. So what I want to start out with is what's happening right now with the Epstein thing is a cover-up. It's a belief that if I say a lie enough, and I believe, oh crud, I can't remember who said this, but I'm quoting someone, that if you tell a lie enough, it will become a truth and it will be believed. And this is very obvious if you've done any historical research on just something as simple as American history. And I remember years ago, when I first read Howard Zinn's book, and I was like, wait, what? What did Columbus do? I didn't know that. That's not what I was taught about Columbus. And then you learn a little bit, who are the Pilgrims? Wait, why did they come to America? It's like, oh, I had no idea. I totally went along with the narrative that was taught in schools. My grandchildren dressed up as pilgrims and Indians on Thanksgiving, and we had fun little theater productions in our family with them portraying the pilgrims that offered the Native Americans, food to eat, so that they wouldn't starve to death. And I mean, we played the whole game, right? And then you find out more things like the Native Americans and the history of the Native Americans. I had no idea. I mean, we just got back from South Dakota. We went and visited a lot of the sites of the Native Americans there, and we're like, what happened? And tell me more about you know, uh, the tale of tears, the trial of why can't I say that word? Trail of tears. It's too much. It's almost too much. And it creates a little bit of cynicism in your life where you start to not believe anything. But what I'm looking at the Epstein stuff right now, it's more than just that. It's more than just not getting the full picture. It's a literal cover up. And it's very frustrating. So, what I want to show you is a Mormon version of patriarchal cover up. Okay. And just to give you a little bit of precedence, there's a lot of things in the news right now on SA in the Christian world. And if you don't follow Julie Royce, please go to Royce Report, and I will link it in here, and follow Julie, because Julie is an evangelical Christian who has made it her life's mission to acknowledge and to talk about the SA that goes on in the evangelical world. And I went to one of her conferences. I've mentioned that in some of my other podcasts. And I asked her, have you ever looked into the Mormon world? And she said, I can't. There's so much that I have to deal with in the evangelical world of Christianity that I can't do that, but I am aware of it. The other link that I will give you is floodlit.org, who I monthly donate to. That is where my donations go to, floodlit.org. And they have taken the Julie Royce avenue, where they're not looking at other abusers in the Christian world. They're literally just looking at Mormon men who have been arrested and convicted. If I am not mistaken, they do not publicize men that have been accused. They have to be literally arrested, and some kind of legal action has been taken against them for them to talk about it. But it doesn't have to be, the conviction doesn't have to be jail. I mean, they're talking about Mormon men in the church who have held very high positions of authority in the church that have been accused and then convicted, and something has happened. In the case of Dr. Farley, who I know personally because he was a doctor in Oregon, and he was my son's doctor. So I know him personally. In his case, his medical license was taken away and he moved out of state. And so he is no longer authorized to work as a physician, but he has not been excommunicated, or there has not been any religious action taken against him. So that's the kind of thing. So look at Floodlit. So what I'm going to start out first, considering a comparative with the Epstein thing, that what's going on is in the Mormon Church in 1995, they established what they call the helpline. And the narrative that they tell is that this line was established to help victims of domestic violence and any kind of SA, abuse. And so it's touted and heralded as a service to victims. However, you cannot call the hotline. The hotline will not talk to you unless you are a certified bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or always mostly known as Mormons, or some other high authority. And you have to show and give proof that you hold that position. And then what this helpline is for is, let's say you're a bishop, which outside of the Mormon religion would be similar to a pastor or some kind of leader in an evangelical church. Let's say you hold that position and someone has come to you as their clergy and has admitted that they are conducting some kind of abuse in their home. You would not call the police. You would not report any kind of abuse. You would call the helpline first. And the helpline would tell you as a clergy member what to do. And they tout this as a service, but in reality, what they're doing is protecting the corporation known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a legal business. And they have lawyers that answer this helpline, or they have helpers that then turn it over to lawyers. And then they are looking to make sure that no matter what is reported, they can cover their bases as an entity. And so the bishops are told not to report this, that let's work with this person who is abusing their family, and let's see if we can get them to stop doing that. And let's see if we can get them through our religious practices, if we can get them to stop abusing their children and their wife or whatever domestic thing is going on. And so that is what the authorities are told. And so there in other countries, there is no clergy privilege. They have mandated, number one, background checks and also mandatory reporting. In America, it is still, in some states, there's mandatory reporting, but in other states, there is not. And the state of Utah, of course, because it is most of our legal people that are in high positions of authority. Most of them are LDS, and so they serve in the Senate and in the Congress and locally and also nationally. And so the efforts to try to get laws passed that go against anything that the LDS Church teaches are very difficult to do. And so they are fighting against mandatory reporting. And so I want to give you two examples of how this is looked at. Number one, this is a Mormon apologist. She works for the church, and I don't care what she says. I know that we could find a trail that says she's not, but there's all these fingerling organizations that the Mormon Church funds, that they go through other sources so that it can't be tracked down to the church. But there's always, if you look at the flow, there is a funnel that serves these people. And so she is basically working for the church, and this is her apology.
This is going to sound crazy, but when bishops are not required to report SA, more victims actually get help.
And now this is the counter. Mormon church leaders in multiple cases around the U.S. learned of leaders.
It sounds backwards. You would think that more mandatory reporting laws would lead to more SA being reported. But what actually happens is that in states where clergy are mandated reporters, the system actually gets overwhelmed with false reports.
Okay, read this. He molested 53 children and was protected by multiple Mormon church leaders for years. And as you can see, Jay Toombs released from prison after admittedly molesting at least 13 children at the Mormon church as a Mormon church scoutmaster and member, as announced by floodlit.org. So this is an example of a man that continued to molest children. And so I'm going to stop with every rebuttal that they have against what Jasmine is saying.
Turns out that when a bishop's office is 100% confidential, victims and even perpetrators are more likely to open up. And when they trust that conversation's safe, bishops have a better chance of persuading that person to self-report and get help before it's too late.
Turns out that Mormon leadership care more about protecting predators than helping victims. Floodlit.org has learned that two former LDS Social Services commissioners who were also stake presidents allegedly failed to report child sexual abuse. They were looking for your story, or we're looking for your stories if you have any interaction. So contact Floodlit if you have any, if something like this, if you've been a victim in any way. On July 9th, 6-year-old Annie, that's just a pseudonym, was riding her bike home from a friend's house in Utah, where she saw former Mormon stake president, 3-time bishop, and twice convicted a sex offender, Robert C. Jones, sitting on his front porch. And I think the story goes on to talk about how he invited her into the home. Brady Hansen case report. In Utah, former Judge Kevin Christensen and former Fire Chief Brady Hansen are facing child sex abuse charges, both allegedly perpetrated while active in the Mormon Church. Former Mormon missionary William James Purdy. Oh, that went way too fast. Mormon sexual abuse news. Former Idaho high school football coach charged with sexual abuse of a teenager and was a Mormon bishopric counselor twice from 2014 to 2019. And the list goes on and on and on. Arrested in Florida, alleged child abuse, several foster adopted children included sexual abuse. So this is a family that, was, anyway.
I know this is going to sound crazy, but when bishops are not required to report SA, more victims actually get help.
Okay, let me just stop. Mormon church leaders in multiple cases around the U.S. learned of leaders assaulting children, and rather than reporting it to the police, leaders instead threatened members with Mormon church discipline if they were not silent. And this is a picture of Colby Redditt and his beautiful wife, and how this was the cause of Colby actually leaving the church, because his bishop refused to take any action against someone that Colby knew was abusing. So basically what this woman, who apologizes for every freaking thing that comes up. I mean, if you don't even bother. I mean, if any kind of archaeological evidence comes up that shows that the Book of Mormon is just a 19th century literature made up book, that anything that they've been trying to prove, archaeologically, that the Book of Mormon is true, they can't find any evidence. But if there's anything, they will jump on social media and say, wait, they did find a horse. And then of course the archaeologists go, no, they didn't, stop it. But so that's Jasmine's job, is to apologize for every freaking thing. Now, here was something that was a little bit, I remember this was something that was posted about a year ago by a very popular, not an apologist for the church whatsoever, but actually someone who has a very successful podcast and YouTube and whatnot. And he left the church because of truths that he found out. And he was just like, he couldn't suffer the cognitive dissonance any longer. It's like, look, I have to be true to myself. And I've learned things that I just can't grapple with anymore. It's like this, you grapple with it. So this is too much. So he left the church. So he's what members of the church called an anti-Mormon. But I was really startled because I remember this about a year ago. So let me share with you what Bill has to say.
Somebody who had committed sexual abuse, often a father against his own children. In some instances, the father was serving or had served as a bishop in the church. And the criticism is that when abuse is discovered, one is to call the church's hotline, talk to the church's legal team, and then the legal team will often tell the person, the bishop who's calling, not to report the abuse unless it's a state where mandatory reporting is required.
Okay, now Bill was a former bishop, so he is speaking from experience. And so I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. So what Bill is saying here is that, let's see what this, let me put it here.
The most likely. And whoops. And so that's what I did. I'm going to put up on the screen now my Google search here. So I use the Brave search engine, but you could use Google, you can use Bing. It doesn't.
Okay, what Bill is explaining here is that he was totally for mandatory reporting. It was his belief that it doesn't matter. The police need to be called, and this bishop's helpline is garbage. It needs to go away. And then someone, a man, presented to him another bias. And he was like, you know what? I am very proud of my critical thinking skills. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to do some research. because I believe that you should have mandatory reporting, but this gentleman says statistically and data has proven that mandatory reporting does not help the situation. And in fact, sometimes it makes it worse. So Bill is showing you the research that he did to try to understand and to use critical thinking and understanding that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Matter. What I looked up was what research studies say about mandatory reporting. And I looked it up in several different ways. This was one of my search results. And so you'll see, what is the impact of mandatory reporting?
Okay, I'm going to skip forward to his conclusion that he reached after doing this research. Let me get to his. Okay.
Abusive tendency, abusive propensity, and I want to get rid of it. I want to talk it out with somebody. I am now aware that in a mandatory reporting state, I'm aware that the teachers, the psychologists, the priest, the doctors, the psychiatrist, if I share these things with them, they're going to have to report it. And if I go into these engaging these personal engagements with these people, knowing that they're going to mandatory report it, I am less likely to speak up. The data bears that out.
Okay, so we're going to go through each one of Bill's conclusions that he came to. Number one, first of all, again, I would like some data. And what Bill did was research that came from, he lists all of his sources, but what he does not list is resources from the actual victims. And just like in the Jeffrey Epstein case, this is a man who has not suffered through any kind of SA. You know what? Actually, I don't know that. Maybe he did. I don't know that. But what I'm saying is taking a man's point of view that he is collecting literally just statistics and data. And we know what they say about statistics. And but he's not taking under consideration the actual victims. And the other thing that he's not taking under consideration here is that let's take it out of the SA. Let's put this same mindset and conclusion against other crimes. Because how many of you who are regularly use alcohol, how many of you who regularly use alcohol, you go to your doctor and they ask you, how many drinks do you have a week? And you say, oh, 1 or 2. You know very well you have like 3 a day. All right. But you're not going to tell your doctor that because you just want to get some medicine for your headaches that you have or whatever. So, you know, that is human nature. Okay. You go to your doctor, you say, no, you know, you're filing your taxes. There's always like, say, well, I didn't know that was supposed to be considered income. You know, you're driving too fast. What, officer? I didn't know that the speed limit had jumped from, 45 to 35. I didn't see that sign. And so should we report that person? I don't know. I mean, let's give this guy a break. And a lot of times they do. But I'm just saying this blanket statement that people will not get therapy, they won't get the services that they need, they won't, somehow stop doing what they're doing, that none of those things will happen if they're forced to report that or if they get arrested. And I want you to know all of those things you can get all of those things in jail. You can get therapy, you can have sessions, group sessions, you can get all kinds of help in jail, and you can be removed from the family. So this idea that these poor people that are abusing their family will not be able to get the services they need if they are arrested and taken away from the situation that they are causing. That's not true. So that's number one. Okay.
Okay. Number 2, the ability to confess to a medical professional, my ability to talk out my problems with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or even a priest or other clergy member. Whether you wanted it to say this or not, the data says that such leads to lower abuse rates. The ability to confess my sin and get help. leads to lower abuse rates. Now, there's a whole nother conversation about whether LDS lay leaders have.
Okay. Number two is such BS. The idea that these people with power, money, and control are going to stop doing what they're doing if they just, if Jeffrey Epstein would have just had the ability, financial, time wise, location, if he just could have gone to a therapist or admitted what he was doing to a psychiatrist or his doctor, if he just could have on his own gotten the help that he needed, he would have. But it was because of mandatory reporting that he never told anyone what he was doing. And he never got the help that he needed because, I mean, gosh, the guy was a billionaire, lived in New York City. There's no therapists in New York. And if he had to go get therapy, he would have to stop doing what he's doing. Dang it. That's such a hard thing to consider. Stop abusing people. Stop getting paid to let other men abuse people. What should I do? It wasn't until someone reported him that he was able to be taken out of society. So I'm sorry, I can't go along with that one at all.
Have the capability to do any of this. The average bishop, again, having served as one, I am deeply skeptical of a lay leader in the LDS church or in other churches where lay leaders are used to respect the degree of training they get and their ability to cause this. All I'm saying is that across the board, generally, the data says the ability to confess one's abuse to a medical professional or a clergy member leads to lower abuse rates. Okay, number 3, when mandatory reporting is in effect, most additional reports turn out to be not true. If people fear a lawsuit, if a teacher in a school fears a lawsuit, if a doctor with a medical practice fears a lawsuit, if a priest fears a lawsuit, they will report anything resembling abuse.
Okay. This is another, number 3. I highly disagree with this. I am not saying that there are not fraudulent accusations that are made against men. I know, I've seen it, okay? I've also seen men who were caught. They didn't admit. These were active men in my community that I went to church with who were caught cheating on their wives and abusing children. They were caught, even though the wives had gone to clerical superiors authorities and said, look, we're having a big problem in our family. What they were told by these religious people were, you're not loving your husband enough. And if you would just start reading your scriptures and giving him the love and support that he needs, things will get better in your home. That's what they were told. The congregation was told to stop gossiping. Don't talk about this man that has abused his wife, cheated on her, and we will just forgive and forget. For the sake of the children, we will let this pass. And I've seen these men go on to finally, after years, get arrested because they continued to abuse not only their family, but as a professional. This is a case in particular that I'm talking about. A doctor continued to abuse his patients because nothing was done clerically. And so this is garbage. I do not believe this for a second. And I cannot understand where this, I'm sure this data was collected under a certain criteria that is not being divulged. It's just not true. It doesn't stop. These people do not do their own work because it is a power play. It is a confidence builder that they know they have, it's power, that they have control, and what they do to innocent victims, their children, their patients, their co-workers that don't have the same power, money, or prestige, that they will not stop doing it until they are stopped. So I don't believe that one for a second.
Even if it isn't or doesn't quite meet the threshold. Again, all of us parents at one time or another lost our cool a little bit with our kid. Maybe we were too harsh in our tone. Maybe we grounded them too severely, whatever it is.
Methinks thou protest too much, but that's another podcast.
When mandatory reporting is in effect, people tend to report quite a bit that doesn't quite meet the threshold of what would be considered actual abuse that needs to be dealt with.
And what exactly is the threshold, Bill? That's what I want to know. Where is your line? Because I did a fabulous podcast, and I will put a link to that with Lundy Bancroft, who works with abusers that have been taken out of the home, arrested, and he works with these men. And every one of them have a different level of what they consider to be abuse. Some men consider choking, that's just play. That's not abuse. Some women say, well, I didn't hit her in the face. That's their line. Other men say, well, I didn't physically abuse them. I just took away all of the money, the car keys, and didn't allow her to leave the house. So they don't consider that abuse. So where's your level? Where is your level of abuse? The same thing goes for children. What's the level of abuse? Well, we know Ruby Franke is sitting in jail because her idea of abuse was not starving her children. But the law said, you are abusing your children. And so, obviously, nobody thought she was doing anything wrong until there was law involved in it. So Ruby Franke is a perfect example of what's your level of abuse. She had a freaking $1 million a month YouTube channel exposing to the world what she was doing to her children and her husband. And the whole world went, something's wrong. Something's wrong here. But nobody did anything until her little baby boy escaped from the prison he was being held in and said to a neighbor, will you call the police? That is how she was. Nobody else said a daggone thing about what was happening in that home. So what is your level? Who says, Bill, what's abuse? Well, I spank my kids with a spoon or I hit them with a belt. That's my prerogative. I'm a parent. Well, I don't know. Let's look at the child. I watch enough true crime. Okay, I'm a woman, right? That's what we do. I watch enough true crime for parents that have been called into the school when their child is there with welts all over their body and go, hey, I'm a parent. Yeah, you're right. He got spanked. He stole food out of the refrigerator when he was told he couldn't have dinner because he didn't want to eat my lasagna. And we sent him to bed hungry. They were very entitled in their decision. So who's to decide what your line is? Where's your red line? I totally was upset with this one.
The professionals in charge of investigating are then bogged down with these false reports. Not false because the person reporting it is.
That's their job. Okay. That's their job. And I also watch enough true crime to see when these authorities and professionals in charge don't do their job. They don't report what they see. They're too lazy to file the reports that need to be filed. So I've seen that too. So that is also garbage.
Is filing a false report, but because they're reporting something that turns out to not be what they were told to report.
I would rather report something and have children be found safe than to not report it and find out that they were being abused.
So there's number 3. Number 4, of abuse survivors, only 18% said that reporting made things better, while 62% said it made things worse. That includes 3% who said it made things much better and 50% who said it made things much worse.
Okay. So that number 4 just like, whoa. It's like, first of all, 18% of those that survived, let's start out with that. 18% of those that weren't killed report that it didn't make anything better. Well, why? Why didn't it make it better? Because the person was not removed from the home, because the abuse didn't stop, because no one believed them, because the professionals came into the home, they didn't see anything, or they were too lazy, or they just didn't want to get something else into the system and they walked away. What is the context to that statistic? I want to know, because I watch enough true crime again to see that when law didn't follow up, when CPS didn't do their job, when the people were not stopped from doing the abuse, Yeah, it got a lot worse. Of course it gets a lot worse. So none of those statistics made sense to me. So what happened after he put this on, because he does a 2 or 3 times a week podcast in YouTube that is mostly concentrated on Mormonism. He doesn't usually get off into political things. He's done it a couple times and it's backfired both times. But he was hit hard for this. And his reaction was, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. So I don't even know if he ever responded to this, but he was hit hard with this. But to me, that is just another example of a man talking about a way that we can deal with this that is just, a little bit too apologetic for my taste. So that's just a perfect example. Now, in general, the reason why this is so frustrating is because the Mormon Church for 200 years has definitely held on to the 1950s and 19th century beliefs that a woman's place is in the home, that women have no authority in the LDS Church, they have no voice in the church, they have no their ideas are they're just flooded with platitudes, constantly told how wonderful they are, how much we value you and how much we love your voice. But it's a lie. It's all just a front, just like what's going on with Epstein. It's just the Mormon Church thinks that if they say things quietly and in a loving tone, that it totally excuses them from the actual words that they're saying. And let me give you an example.
I said to my wife, Wendy, I hope the sisters understand the spiritual treasures that are theirs in the temple. How I yearn for you to understand that the restoration of the priesthood is just as relevant to you as a woman as it is to any man. Because the Melchizedek priesthood has been restored, both covenant-keeping women and men have access to all the spiritual blessings of the church.
Okay, I mean, I think this was given in 2019, so I was still a believing member at that time, and I probably watched this and probably went, oh my gosh, he's acknowledging that we are alive and we're present. But after my eyes were opened, I realized what he's saying is, oh, honey, you don't have any authority or voice on earth, but spiritually, you're a daughter of God. God loves you. You have a role. You have a job here on earth. Just shh. But just take advantage of if you pay 10% of your income, if you give us 10% of your gross income, then you can go into this building that we call the temple, and you can do work, ceremonial work for your ancestors and others that have passed on, because the Mormon Church believes that if you don't take on temple covenants, even after you're dead, that you will not go to heaven. Okay. And so they're saying, yeah, we'll talk about Tim Ballard in a second. But yes, so the church is saying, so you go to the temple after you give us your money, you go to the temple and you can do this pretend work for your family, and you will feel the spirit, and you will feel so blessed, and you will be blessed because of your obedience. Okay. So that's what he's saying here. So let me go on and let him speak.
Or we might say, to all the spiritual treasures the Lord has for his children. Those who are endowed in the house of the Lord received a gift of God's priesthood power by virtue of their covenant, along with a gift of knowledge to know how to draw upon that power.
Okay, another thing that he's doing is he is categorizing people. So you can join the Mormon Church. You can be baptized at the age of 8 years old. You can be baptized as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But that's it, folks. You're not going to heaven. You can just, first of all, you can give us your money. And if you give us your money, Then if you also follow our other rules, which is you don't drink alcohol or drink coffee, smoke cigarettes or any kind of tobacco, and if you don't drink alcohol, if you don't do those things, and if you come to church every Sunday and sit your butt in the pew and listen to our indoctrination, then you can go to the temple, and then you are considered a full-fledged Mormon and you can go to heaven. So he's put in an elite system that says you will know the full extent of the gospel if you're allowed into this holy building that we build with the money that you've given us. I'm not cynical at all, am I?
The heavens are just as open to women who are endowed with God's power, that power flowing from their priesthood covenants.
Okay, the priesthood covenants that come from going to the temple, which means in the temple, men give them blessings. And that's a blessing. And that's a spiritual blessing that you have from the priesthood, from men. Men will give you blessings in the temple. You will get them from men. You will be blessed. That is your spiritual gift from men.
As there are to men who bear the priesthood. I pray that truth will register upon each of your hearts, because I believe it will change your life. I pray that truth will register upon each of your hearts, because I believe it will change your life. What could possibly be more exciting than to labor with the Spirit to understand God's power, priesthood power?
Only men have the priesthood.
Now, may I clarify several additional points with respect to women and priesthood. When you are set apart to serve in a calling under the direction of one who holds priesthood keys.
When you are set apart, which is a term that Mormons use, which means a man with the priesthood will call you into his office and say, I have a job for you. I would like for you to teach the 11-year-old children in a organization called the Primary in the Mormon Church. I would like for you every Sunday to prepare a lesson and teach them. And you're not allowed to say no. I mean, you can't say no. There's nobody's going to come and arrest you. But there is a teaching in the Mormon Church that says you never turn down a calling, because you're turning down a request from God if you turn down a calling. I turned down a calling because I was my handicapped son was in this organization called Primary, and he loved it. He loved the music. He loved the children. The people were so kind to him. And I was called by a person in priesthood authority that we want you to be a teacher in the Primary. And I said, no. I said, if I go into Primary and my son, who is blind, hears my voice and knows that I'm in there, he will, he was nonverbal. So what he would do is he would call me in a very kind of loud, disturbing voice to others, but people learned to love him. But he would be, Mama, Mama, Mama. And he would, he would sing songs and he would be like, that was his way of singing. And people loved him and they accepted that. But it was disturbing, especially for children. If I'm not there, he would sit quietly in the back and just laugh and listen. And that I said, I can't be in the same room with him. It's going to be disturbing for all of the children. And he said, well, you've been called by God to take this calling. And I said, well, I'm not going to. And he was mad. He was mad. And then he called me later on. He goes, I prayed about this. Your name came to me and you are supposed to take this calling. And I said, well, I'm not going to. So, that took me being older to get that confidence to say that. But most people are told you never turn down a calling. So this whole, when a man tells you what you can do at church, what an opportunity you have.
Such as your bishop or stake president, you are given priesthood authority to function in that calling.
So I guess I have the authority to teach 11-year-old girls. I don't know why that needs some kind of priesthood authority. But the priesthood authority was given me by the man who said I could do that. That's what he's getting at.
Similarly, in the Holy Temple, you are authorized to perform and officiate in priesthood ordinances every time you attend.
Okay, that's not true for everyone. And what he's trying to gaslight people into thinking is that because they are there and they are raising their right hand to the square and promising to obey these rules that are given to them in the temple, that is their opportunity to experience their priesthood. Now, as a temple worker, I worked in the Portland temple for over 5 years. I actually did perform ordinances that would normally not be able to be held by women, but I was called specifically to work in the temple as a temple ordinance worker. So not everyone that goes to the temple experiences that. So this is also bullcrap.
Your temple endowment prepares you to do so. If you are endowed but not currently married to a man who bears the priesthood, and someone says to you, "I'm sorry you don't have the priesthood in your home," please understand that statement is incorrect. You may not have a priesthood bearer in your home, but you have received and made sacred covenants with God in his temple. From those covenants flows an endowment of his priesthood.
Okay, first of all, again, that's not true. If my children were ill and I felt like I wanted to ask God to heal them, I do not have the power to lay my hands on my children's head and give them a blessing saying, I am asking God to heal you from this. I would have to call a man that I am not married to, that is not a member of my family, to come into my home and put their hands on my sick child. That is not the same. So this entire talk was gaslighting bullshit. And people lurped it up like a kitty cat in a bowl of milk. I mean, it was just like, oh, look, President Nelson, who is the current prophet in the church right now. He's 100 years old. He's totally incompetent, but he's still being propped up like Weekend at Bernie's and being touted as the prophet that's still receiving revelations from God. But this is the kind of bullcrap that he started throwing out when he was ordained in 2018. So, but that lets you know how the Mormon church takes information or their gospel principles, and let me get rid of this, and speaks softly to encourage you to accept it as gospel. Okay, so that's just an example. Let me scroll down. That's just an example of the Mormon theology that quietly teaches women where their place and where they belong. Now, what's happening in the Mormon church is that they are becoming more evangelical. The reason is there is a huge movement out there called the Christian Nationalist movement. And what they are trying to do is go back to 1950s culture and cherry-picked biblical teachings that tell women they don't have a voice, they should be pregnant and in the home, they should not work outside of the home, and we should repeal the 19th Amendment. They should not even have the right to vote. Mormons want to jump on that boat. They want to go along with that because their goal is also to be a theology that controls the nation. Now, right now, they're quietly doing that by being the wealthiest church in the world because they take members' funds and then they invest those funds and they are making huge returns. And they are literally the wealthiest church in the world, surpassing the Catholic Church because of the way that it's set up as a corporation. And so they're taking those funds. They don't need people's money, but they want their work off their backs, and they want their finances to use to use so they can buy other things. They use people who volunteer as a service project to work in the church and for the church for free, so they don't have to pay labor, which also helps their bottom line. So they have decided, look, we are not being accepted by the Christian church. They are not accepting us as Christ-believing members of this society. So we got to change. We got to do some change. And so for the last probably 3 years, they have pushed that we're Christian. We believe in Jesus. What are you talking about? Look at the name of our church. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're not even going to call ourselves Mormons anymore because, we're not Mormons. I mean, we're believers in Jesus Christ. That was just a nickname that was given to us, and we're going to drop it. And don't you dare even use that term around us. It's offensive. It's a tool of Satan to say the word Mormon. Where did you even get that idea? I mean, I know we taught it for 250 years, but I mean, why would you continue to talk like that? I mean, this is the gaslighting that goes on. So they're starting to wear crosses. They're bringing in little bands that used to be absolutely forbidden. And they are totally trying to get as evangelical as they can because they want to join this movement. And why? Because it's going to give men the control that they're losing. So, and I'm sure you're all aware, but let's take a look at this.
Pastor Doug Wilson is a self-described Christian nationalist on a mission to make the United States a Christian nation and the entire world a Christian world. Over the decades, he's built an international network of more than 150 churches. And last month, he opened a new one just 3 blocks from Capitol Hill, with the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, attending the service. Pastor Wilson preaches a strict interpretation of the Bible. He believes women should submit to their husbands and not have the right to vote. In his view, abortion and homosexuality are criminal. He's been on the fringes of the religious right for decades, but now finds more of a mainstream Republican audience. CNN's Pamela Brown reports.
Christchurch senior pastor Doug Wilson makes no apologies for his beliefs on God and country.
I'd like to see the town be a Christian town. I'd like to see the state be a Christian state. I'd like to see the nation be a Christian nation. And I'd like to see the world be a Christian world.
And now Wilson's controversial views as a Christian nationalist are gaining sway in the nation's center of power with the recent opening of his new church and high-profile parishioners like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Is planting a church in D.C. part of your mission to try to turn this into a Christian nation?
Yes. So every society is theocratic. The only question is who's theo? In a secular democracy, it would be demos, the people. In a Christian republic, it'd be Christ.
Well, what would you say to someone watching this and say, look, I'm a Muslim. Who are you to say your worldview is better than mine, that your God is better than mine?
Well, if I went to Saudi Arabia, I would fully expect to live under their God's rules.
But you said earlier that you want this to be a Christian world.
Yes.
So you want to supplant their religion with your Christian.
Yes, by peaceful means, by sharing the gospel. There's a lot of work yet to do. I believe that we are working our little corner of the vineyard.
Wilson's Little Corner, a picturesque campus nestled on the outskirts of downtown Moscow, Idaho, is growing by the day with thousands of like-minded Christians. Parishioners of his church, known as Kirkers, own and operate several businesses downtown, next to liberal college town stores.
If it's true,
Why did he yell boo? Because
of me.
Because of you.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
That's a regular day for you.
That's not unusual.
A big focus of his Christian movement is on a patriarchal society where men are dominant and women are expected to submit to their husbands.
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have.
Women are the type of people that people come out of. That's who we are. That's our purpose. That is taught in these Christian religions, including the Mormon Church. That is our purpose, and that is our complete, something that we agreed upon in a pre-life condition. So let's go on.
Babies. That's it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother who is
You know, it doesn't take any talent to ejaculate. That's all I'm saying. You can't make a baby by yourself, guys. It doesn't really take any talent.
the chief executive of the home is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
I'm here as a working journalist, and I'm a mom of 3.
Good for you.
Is that an issue
No.
for you?
No, it's not automatically an issue.
Josh and Amy Prince, along with their 4 kids, moved here from Washington State.
Do you see Amy as your equal?
Yes and no, in the sense that we're both saved by grace. We're absolutely on equal footing, but we have very different purposes.
See, that's the same message that Russell Nelson was giving. As far as God is concerned, are we both children of God? Yes. But do we have the same purpose on earth? No. Your purpose is to have babies and stay home and raise the children so that I can pursue all of the things that I love in the world. I can pursue a career. I can pursue hobbies. I can pursue talents that I have. I can do all of those things. Plus, I can be considered a father So I can put that on my resume. I'm a father of 4. I'm a father of 5. And I'm also a basketball player. And I also have whatever. I get to do that because you will do nothing else but stay home with those children and turn them into fabulous people. Okay, let's go on.
God-given.
But do you see yourself as the head of the household, as the man?
He is the head of our household. Yes, and I do submit to him.
So like moving here
I was just
was
gonna say that.
ultimately your decision.
Yes.
That's a
Okay, so I'm gonna take that off. So basically what they go on to say, and I want you to know that this is 2025. I haven't been to the temple since 2019 when I resigned my membership. So I went back to the temple I had stopped going to the temple in 2018 because it was so misogynist. And I just understood once my brain was fully formed. And I literally was raising my hand, bowing my head, promising to obey and honor my husband, who was considered the head of the home, the patriarch in our home, and that his decisions completely overrided any of mine. And so I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is baloney. And so I completely stopped going. But then I heard that they had made some changes. And I thought, well, let's go back to the temple and see what the changes were. And the changes were so now Eve is standing next to Adam and they're like, hey, guy, we're like doing this together, right? Right. And so, like these are decisions that we made together, right? Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, please don't pretend. Please don't pretend that this was some revelation from God. This is such a society-based organization. It's pathetic. So I was like, I am done with this garbage and resigned my membership. So I haven't been to the temple back then. I know they've changed it even since then. And so now they're like, they brought Jesus into the temple. He has never been in any of the ordinances. I was an ordinance worker. I have all of those ceremonies memorized. I have copies of the what's told in the temple. There was no Jesus. Okay. I mean, yeah, there was Jesus from the standpoint that we're Christians. Okay. But Jesus was not the focus. And now he is all over the ceremony that's in the temple. It is such gaslighting. It is pathetic. So this whole thing, and it's still taught. Now we're going to skip out of this. I'm going to get rid of this slide. And we're going to talk about one of the things that Christians have a hard time with accepting that Mormons are Christian is Mormons believe that Jesus Christ and Satan are brothers, that they are both sons of God, and that, Satan just went in a wrong direction. What are you going to do? We all have kids that go a little haywire, right? And Satan was really ticked off that he didn't have as much power, and that's why he became evil and was trying to control all of the children that God created. Now, God created? What does that mean? What does that mean that we're all spirits of our Heavenly Father? We are children, literal children of a Heavenly Father. This is not a metaphor. Mormons believe they are literally children. How can that be? Well, because God has many wives. God practices polygamy in heaven, not in heaven, in the premortal existence. And what the ghost women are doing in the premortal existence is they're making spiritual babies. So they must be having spiritual sex. I mean, God is like popping out spiritual babies right and left with all these women that are his wives. And then those spirit babies come to earth and they take a body, and then the earth life is meant for testing. So we can be tested to see how valiant we are. Now, we make promises in the pre-existence, and we're put in our bodies because of how the promises that we made in the pre-existence. So the fact that I'm a white girl born in Illinois, in America in the 50s, is because I was so valiant that I didn't need to be born as a sex slave in Thailand, because I was really valiant in the pre-existence. That is taught in the Mormon church. Apologists tried coming after me. I will show you the video. Okay. That's the problem. See, in the Mormons can't see all these old men. I mean, the entire first presidency in the Mormon church, they're over 90. They're all, dying out. And, so, everything that they used to teach that they're not like, what? We didn't teach that. We're talking about they can't do that because everybody has videos now. They have transcripts. So they can't deny the teachings that were given to them. Okay. So anyway, so they have multiple, and now let me tell you, so the whole polygamy thing, the church is really big on denying polygamy, but they still practice it, only it's in a spiritual way. So men can be married to many wives in the temple. They can't be married in the world because it's illegal, Bill Reel, going back to why men don't do things. They would do them if they could, but they can't because it's illegal. So because they can't, because legally they were forced to stop by the national United States government, who told them, we're going to take everything you own and put you in jail if you don't stop practicing polygamy. So they're like, fine, okay, but we're going to still do it in spiritual form. So men can be sealed to many wives spiritually, as the president of the Mormon Church and his first counselor are married to 2 wives, 2 women. They are sealed to 2 women in the next life. So they will be having spirit babies with these women in their next life. And so, but here's the other thing. So we believe we have a mother in heaven, but the church will not talk about it. And you're not allowed to talk about it because she's so special. And so it's just irreverent to even speak her name. So let me show you another case of the huge apology crap that's done. So this is the man in conference a couple of years ago who was just sick of hearing about Mother in Heaven. And he's trying to put a kibosh on this. It's like, can we stop, please? So this is his little talk.
The doctrine of a heavenly mother comes by revelation and is a distinctive belief among Latter-day Saints. Speculation won't lead to greater spiritual knowledge, but it can lead us to deception or divert us and divert our focus from what has been revealed. For example, the Savior taught his disciples, "Always pray unto the Father in my name." We follow this pattern and direct our worship to our Heavenly Father in the name of Jesus Christ, and do not pray to Heavenly Mother.
Okay. So he goes on to say, and this is the part that's just absolutely so frustrating. He goes on in this talk to say, we don't pray to Heavenly Mother. We don't talk about her. We don't have any information about her. And we need to stop asking. So stop praying to God to reveal, because what Renland is saying here is that the church works off of revelations directly from God. They don't do anything. They don't make one policy unless it comes from revelation, which is a lie. It is a huge lie. They had a revelation in 2015 that if your parents are gay, then you cannot be baptized until you are 18 and completely denounce your parents. They made that, and people were like, what? And they were leaving the church in droves. And so then a few years later, they're like, wait. You're not going to believe this. We just received another revelation. Come to find out, God was like, okay, fine. You can be baptized. Okay, that's how they explain. So he's saying, we don't know anything about Heavenly Mother because we have not received a revelation. So stop talking about it. Okay, this was his talk in April 22. This is how apologists handle that.
Hey friends, I'm Bethany Brady Spalding.
And I'm MacArthur Krishna. We write books celebrating Heavenly Mother.
And as we speak to Latter-day Saint communities around the world, we hear similar questions. So we thought, why not create a few short videos explaining some answers?
Come celebrate Heavenly Mother with us.
So we know that Heavenly Mother is a cherished Latter-day Saint doctrine, but can we talk about her?
So this is the most common question Bethany and I get when we run around doing firesides, and so it's worth discussing. How do we get to this place where we wondered whether or not we're allowed to talk about our doctrine? Anyone over the age of 20 or 30 was raised with the idea that Heavenly Mother is too sacred or needs to be protected by Heavenly Father, and that we shouldn't talk about her, maybe at a whisper.
Okay, here's something that the Mormon Church is just absolutely renowned for. Claiming that nobody in authority said anything over the pulpit, that it was just some gossip from some random Sunday school guy who said something, that it was never anything that came down from the top. that where on earth did you get that? We never said you could be a god and have your own planet. Well, we have video, people. And so this is what she's saying. She's saying, if you grew up with this idea that we couldn't talk about Heavenly Mother, I don't know where you got that, because that is not doctrine. Okay, well, it is. So let's just go on.
We don't know who thought this idea first, but church historians, they're superheroes, tracked down and found out that it was a California seminary teacher who first propagated the idea that Heavenly Mother couldn't be talked about. Elder Renlund, in his April 2022 General Conference talk, warned about speculation. I don't think he was warning us about thinking, but
I don't think that's what he meant. I mean, when he said that, he couldn't have really meant like, don't think about it. I mean, that's not what he was saying.
speculation and propagating it as if it's doctrine is dangerous. It means that we ended up in a 50-year silence, this sacred silence about
how did we do that for 50 long years? It was just gossip, people.
whether or not we're even allowed to discuss our doctrine. The great news is after Elder Renlund's talk, it's abundantly clear no prophet or apostle has ever said we shouldn't speak of her. That's just a made-up thing. We did it to ourselves. That's good news. If we did it to ourselves, we can undo it. So we can take the heavenly hush to a heavenly hallelujah.
Okay. So that's her thing. Now, I first met MacArthur at a retreat thing that I went to. And on the stage with her was a renowned scholar named Fiona Gibbons. Fiona is married to another man who are they're both scholars. And they're very, very loved and relished in the Mormon church. Fiona she had done a lot of study on Heavenly Mother. And she was presenting firesides. She was writing things. And after she did a fireside, someone reported her to authorities. And she was very quietly asked to step down from her position in the Maxwell Institute that she had. Now, she herself has never come out, has never said anything. She is an active member of the church. She does not want to say anything negative. But because she was talking about a Heavenly Mother, which is forbidden in the Mormon church, she was told to get out and be quiet. And I said to MacArthur, how can you stand on the same stage with a woman who was silenced and say that the church never said we can't talk about Heavenly Mother? Now, Margaret Toscano was excommunicated, a scholar. She's a professor at the University of Utah. She was excommunicated for talking about a Heavenly Mother. And yet here is a woman saying, what? That was never doctrine. What are you talking about? We can talk about it all we want to. That is how the Mormon church is working right now. And that is a perfect example of the cover up. People, the Mormon church claims that there are 17 million members. Now, we all know that's total bullcrap, because they will keep your names on the records of the church until you're like 100 and something, which pretty much guarantees that you're probably, I think it's 110. You're probably dead. But up until then, like my children are I have one child that's active. The other 4 are not active in the church. None of them have taken their names off, but they're not active. So their names are on the records of the church and are being counted in there, saying that there are over 17 million members of the church. Most of them are outside of the United States, because people in the United States that have access to the internet have gotten the knowledge that they need to go, oh no, I am not doing this. And so most of their growth is actually in Africa, which the entire evangelical Christianity, their growth is in Africa. And but the Mormon church is buying memberships in Africa. They're offering people lots of freebies to join the church. So, and then they're also asking them to give them their money, which is insane because these people are struggling financially. But anyway, so this is the hypocrisy and the underlying feeling that women, and these 2 women are making money off of what they're doing. And so in their minds, they have authority. This is a small business you guys started, okay? You're making money. You can't go into Salt Lake with an addendum of all kinds of changes that you would like to see made and present it to the men and go, we all agree that we're supposed to change this, and have them go, wow, we better listen to these ladies. The men are going, that's nice. That's so cute. Go have lunch. Okay, just go, get out. They have no authority. They're simply voices that are being touted by a group that is trying to keep members from leaving the church. They're trying to keep the outflow of membership by trying to gaslight and change people. And that's what the United States government is doing with the Epstein things. None of these men, where are the names of the men? Where are the names of the high men in power and authority? It's being covered up by other men. And this is the problem with Christian nationalism. This is the problem with any kind of power and authority, the patriarchy that keeps men under the boot on their neck. And it's pretty scary. Now, let me just make sure, see if there are any other videos that I wanted to share with you. I'm gonna make sure I covered everything. Let me see, is this the one? I feel like there was another one with President Nelson that I wanted to share, and I don't see if it's there. Let me just share this little tidbit with you because I think this is fun. Okay, I'm going to show you this little clip from Fiona because I think this just shows you where her heart was and what she was saying. That okay, let me move this over. Okay, thanks for hanging in with me. Okay, let me just show you this. This is Fiona, and this is her talking before she was asked to get out of the.
You mentioned, Fiona, you mentioned earlier on about Heavenly Parents, and you just mentioned a little bit about Heavenly Mother. Why do you feel that that's something that we don't talk about as much? I think somebody mentioned to me about 6 months ago, if you were to do a search on the church's website, it kind of comes up, a handful of times. When this is so essential, so sacred, why do you feel that that's something that's not often addressed?
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question, and I think it really runs along with what Terrell is saying, that it's very difficult for God to engage in a conversation, and He will not coerce. He will not coerce the human mind. So the human mind has to be ready for that. It's with the Book of Mormon. Some recognize, okay, there's radical truth here. And some just thought, okay, this is another book. This must be Christian because it sounds an awful lot like the Old Testament to me. So God has to work with not only our culture, with also our intellects and our minds. So it's very gentle, a step by step. So the idea of Heavenly Mother was introduced by Joseph at the very beginning of the Restoration. She was canonized in Eliza Snow's hymn of her, but there has been very little discussion, quite frankly, because we know very little about her. But the fact that this is sort of become growing, people are asking more and more questions about who is Heavenly Mother, how does she fit in the picture? These are important. These are questions that God can answer, but He can only answer them when the majority of us are asking that question. If you see what I mean. So He's not going to be rocking any boats.
And there has been a marked increase in the number of references to Heavenly Mother. If you actually do a word search in General Conference talks, you can track the trend, and it's noticeable. And of course, in the Gospel Topics pages section of LDS.org, there's now an essay on Heavenly Mother and the history of that idea.
So yeah, our
slow progress.
Our feeling is when the people are ready, the Lord will provide, and we're moving rapidly in that direction. So I think we'll be hearing much more about her in the hopefully near future.
Okay. So one of the things, and this may have spurred on that talk by Renlund, I can't remember the timing, but what Fiona was asking is, we need more supplication to God. God wants to hear us. So the more we ask God, tell us more about Heavenly Mother. Everybody pray and ask God to tell us more about Heavenly Mother, because the Mormons don't believe that they know anything unless it came directly from God, which would come from a man. And so Renlund is saying, we don't know anything, and stop asking, because, if God wanted us to know something, He would tell us. And so just shut up, which is not true in any other area. of the Mormon church. They know what we should eat. They know what we should wear. They know what we should do on Sunday. They know all about LGBTQ. So they know all that. God has revealed every stinking portion of our life, except that. For some reason, he hasn't given us any information. So shut up. And Fiona was saying we need more prayers. Pray to God, ask him more about it. So this is another fun thing that I just wanted to share with you.
The one place in America where women still have a right to choose. You can vote any way you want. And no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey. Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls.
That was Oscar-winning actress Julia Roberts in a new ad boosting one of the closing messages of the Harris campaign, that your MAGA-supporting husband doesn't have to know if you decide not to vote for the guy bragging about overturning Roe versus Wade and grabbing women by the P word. That message, though, is freaking out the right, especially its smallest, most fragile men. They're having complete and utter meltdowns on their podcasts and TV shows. Here's Trump ally Charlie Kirk.
She needs people to basically lie to their husbands, which they are promoting, by the way. It is the embodiment of the downfall of the American family. I think it's so gross. I think it's so just nauseating, where this wife is wearing you'll show it, wearing the American hat. She's coming in with her sweet husband, who probably works his tail off to make sure that she can go, and have a nice life and provides for the family. And then she lies to him saying, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. And then she votes for Kamala Harris as her little secret in the voting booth.
I didn't even know there were men that still thought that women never faked anything. Liz Cheney jumped on.
Okay, I had to say, I thought that was fabulous. I didn't even know there were men that think that women don't fake anything. What? How could that be? I thought that was really, really great. So anyway, so that kind of concludes our podcast today. Thank you so much, Solara, for commenting. I appreciate your words. But I really wanted to make this, the Mormon church, I would say, is primarily Republican, very much, mostly Trump supporters, not all, but depending on the area. There's a lot of Trump supporters in the Mormon church, and they are going along with this Christian nationalism 100%, because it would benefit the Mormon church so much. Families, large families, when I would take our children someplace, I would take all 6 babies and we would go somewhere and people would go, oh my gosh, are you Mormon or Catholic? Because they knew Mormons have large families, Catholics have large families. Nobody's having large families anymore. They can't afford to, okay? 4 children in a family is considered a large family. The 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children no longer exists in America. And but if we can get women to stay home and have more white babies, that is what the Christian nationalists are going for. And the Mormon church is highly racist. Highly racist. The only reason why they changed the ban on the priesthood and the temple for Black people was because they needed more numbers. And so, it was a financial corporate decision. So let's just be honest here. What's going on with Epstein in the world and this new authoritarian fascist man that's calling himself the president of the United States is going back to the culture of racism and misogyny, and bringing back patriarchy strong and center. So I really want to leave you with a couple of messages. Number 1, believe the women and listen to them and act on what they're saying. Number 2, let's get the law involved when there is accusations, because nothing will change unless these men are lawfully restricted. It's been proven. And number 3, women, stand up. You are not invisible. The older I get, the more invisible I am out in society. It is extremely sad. If I have one more person call me honey or sweetie, I'm going to choke them and I'm going to be in jail. Okay. You are 20. Do not call me honey. I am a very active, physically capable woman. And how dare you bring me down to a child's level by calling me that? I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's sweet. And I know that it is cultural. I know that it is prominent in other areas of the United States, but I find it extremely offensive. Okay. I'm tired of young people asking me if I know how to get onto my phone when I'm at the movie theater because I had to take a second to get into my wallet and get my tickets out. And then I'm tired of people saying, oh, you know what? Did you reboot your computer? And I'm like, yes, I did. Can we talk about the fact that your product is not functioning? Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll have to send a genius over. Anyway, so the invisibility of women is predominant and it's getting more. They are taking away our rights as women every single day. And until you stop subjugating yourselves to these men, it's going to get worse. And then you're going to be going, what happened? So FAFO, learn from this and start standing up for yourselves and becoming visible. Thanks for joining me today. Talk to you later next week. Bye-bye.